Correa. Mr. Correa, you are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We
Can you
hear
hear
you
me?
loud and clear.
Yes. Thank you very much. First, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this most important hearing. Having children, unaccompanied children in harm's way is never something to be taken lightly. I, like you, have gone to El Paso, Texas. I've had the opportunity to speak to those children in their language. And I also had the opportunity to meet Yuri and Yareli, the 2-year-old and the 5-year-old girls that were thrown over the border by the smugglers. And if it wasn't for the Border Patrol that actually saw them, those young ladies would have perished in the middle of the desert. Now, I've also had the opportunity to visit deported families in Tijuana, Mexico, deported under Title 42 of the Health Code. And as I was sitting there looking at these families, looking at these children, I'm reminded that this is nothing new. In 2008, I also had the opportunity to visit similar places with children, similar faces, similar circumstances in California. This issue is nothing new. It's been going on for 30 to 40 years. And if we don't do something to address the root causes, it'll continue for the next 20 or 30 years. And it's just not correct for us to ignore the root causes. It doesn't matter how dangerous the trip is from Central America. It doesn't matter how expensive the trip is. And a lot of those families are telling me they paid $15,000 to the smugglers. And it doesn't matter how hard it is to cross the border. These families, if they're hungry, if they fear for their life, they will take the trip north. And of course, our efforts cannot be day to day, month to month, but rather consistent. We're concluding our efforts in Afghanistan, our involvement in that war, 20 years. Iraq, dozens of years. Yet this is our backyard. We need a Marshall Plan. We need to stabilize Central America. That's long term. That's where we need to go. But for today, Madam Chair, if I can, I would like to ask some of our witnesses, Ms. Podlock, some questions. Ms. Podlock, how feasible would it be to provide legal services to these migrant families in Central America?
To provide services for them once they're here and they're asking for protection?
While they're still in Central America.
Yeah, so the Biden administration has just committed to restarting the Central American Minors Program so that unaccompanied children can ask for refugee status while they're there. And we think it's imperative for those children to understand the process and understand how they tell the story, so our refugee officers can decide whether or not that person qualifies. And so it's very important for them to make sure that they're able to get know your rights information and have an attorney explain to them how they should tell their story in a way that'll make sense to an adjudicator. There are lots of law firms who are willing to provide services pro bono for free, who want to work and help people so that they can apply for protection closer to home. And we want to make sure that we do that, and we still allow people to come to the border and ask for protection and compliance with US law.
And I asked this question of you because I saw in those faces, those children that have had a long trip, very treacherous and dangerous trip. I saw a young lady, 14 years old, that had gotten raped a number of times by a number of men on that trip. And I, as a father, as a human being, want to figure out what's the best way to provide asylum to these refugee seekers so that they don't have to make this treacherous trip through Mexico and Central America. In your opinion, can we come up with a system that we can provide the rights, protect the rights of asylum seekers while they're still at home?
Yes, absolutely. I think expanding the Central American Minors Program to allow children to ask for refugee status closer to their country of origin, closer to home. I think we can do that for families. We already have regional protection mechanisms, and we can expand those so that we can do refugee processing for people while they're still closer to home. They can make decisions. It'll alleviate the burden, some of the pressure at the border, and it will ensure safety so people don't always have to make a journey to ask for help.
So, ma'am, what can we do as Congress to make sure that we implement this new Biden policy immediately of providing legal access to legal services to refugees in Central America? What can we do?
Sure. So I think appropriating funds to ensure that counsel can be provided and that information can be provided. I think funding information campaigns like DHS and HHS have done in the past. I think being supportive of a presidential request for refugees so that when people make those applications, we have the numbers and we're able to support the resettlement for those who are approved.
And would you say,
Mr. Correa, your time has expired.
thank you, Madam Chair, I yield.
Thank you. The gentleman yields. And now I will recognize